I'd like to request Dr. Probir De, Professor AIC, RIS, India, to introduce the chair and the panelist of this session. Thank you very much.
Right.
Over to you, Dr. De.
Thank you, Isra. Thank you very much for your kind words. Um, Very good afternoon to everyone. I would like to be not invisible, so let me be in that form. And I like to welcome all of you to the organized session on the regional.
We want you to be visible, Dr. Dev.
No, I don't want to be. So I want to be in the, behind, so behind the screen. So I would like to invite all the speakers, panelists, distinguished special remarks by Professor Mustafizur Rahman, chair, our favorite Professor Ajitawar Rai Chaudhary. And we have, the session is on regional connectivity in Bay of Bengal. And we have 5 eminent speakers. Very good friend, Professor So Umezaki. He was kindly agreed to come into this panel. He is handling, and for a long time, several projects connecting India with Southeast Asia. And then Dr. Anushwa Basu Rai Chaudhary. She is the senior fellow at Neighborhood Initiative ORF in Kolkata. She often works in the Bay of Bengal issues, particularly connectivity. Then our good friend Achyut Vandari, co-founder, Center for Research on Bhutanese Society, who is also co-organizer of this program. And towards the end, we will have Ruth Banomyong, and he may not be able to join right now. He said that he has a class, but he will catch up towards the end. Might be he will be the last speaker. That depends on the chair. Ruth Banomyong is associate professor in the Dean, Thammasat Business School. Several of the Ruth's works, I am aware of it, and influence ADB, UNESCAP, and the World Bank in introducing connectivity projects in the Mekong sub-region and Southeast Asia. And then we have Ravi Shankar Sainju, who was former Joint Secretary Government of Nepal and presently with Asian Development Bank, Kathmandu office. So this is the lineup of the panel on the regional connectivity. Very important panel. We are going to listen to all the speakers, their wisdom, their narratives. So with that, I hand over this to Chair Professor Ajitawar Rai Chaudhary to moderate. And thank you very much. Ajitawar, over to you.
Thank you, Professor De, for your very precise, concise introduction to all these speakers and also about me. Well, let me again. It's a pleasure. I'm really thankful to SANEM and its co-partners for inviting me to chair this very important session. And I welcome all my panelists, including this, the invited speaker, Professor Mustafizur Rahman, who is an old friend of mine for quite a long time, I think 20 years now. Well, let me begin by saying that all of you know that what the organizers have this strict guideline, 10 minutes to Mustafiz, 7 minutes to speakers in the beginning. Then we can have some questions in the chat box from the audience. And then I will come back to the speakers again. It's about, depending on the amount of time which we are left, we can just divide this a second round of deliberations for each speaker, 3 to 4 minutes maybe maximum. And then if I can sum up, sometimes it's very difficult to sum up, very erudite speeches. You have problems in summarizing these things. But before I start the whole proceedings, let me just have, very briefly, couple of words which I want to share with you. In fact, what I believe that sometimes we mix up the two things, regional cooperation and regional connectivity. So when people talk about regional connectivity, they bring in a lot of things which are part of regional cooperation, maybe, which is much bigger than connectivity. So connectivity is a subset of cooperation in a sense. So what I feel in this regional connectivity, one aspect which is very well discussed in this type of gatherings and deliberations is the physical connectivity. All of us know it's roads, port, uh, air transport, the telecommunications, and all this physical infrastructure, which will obviously come in. And the other things which I think is more like facilitator, electricity. This is often discussed in regional connectivity. The grid which connects all these neighboring nations, very important, because I would feel it's more like facilitator. If you want to have digital connectivity, which will really be a very important part of our regional connectivity in years to come, electricity plays a very important role. In fact, I would say it's the some kind of a stable electricity supply is a very important factor. So certain things are facilitators of this connectivity. I think people-to-people connectivity will not form too much space here in this discussion. That's my understanding, but that's also a very important part of connectivity. And the last thing which I would say is finally, it's more important. What's the long-term expected outcome? Whatever we talk about, we must keep in mind that there are, we have some wish, we have some plans, we have some suggestions, but what do we expect out of this? There should be some expectations out of whatever we are discussing. That should be very clearly spelled out so that whether the expectations are met within the time limit which we have in mind, we can just check it later on that whether these policies are successful or not, what are the hindrances. I mean, you cannot wait indefinitely. Impatience has a limit in the mind of people on all sides of the border in this Bay of Bengal region. So how long do you want this outcome to take place, and what kind of outcome? With this short introduction, which I think somewhat gives you an idea what at least I am expecting from these deliberations, I invite Professor Mustafizur Rahman to have his very thoughtful ideas on this regional connectivity. 10 minutes to you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Ojitav Chaudhary, Ojitabda. It has been a long time, and we had worked on issues of bilateral trade. I remembered that we found that the export prices and import prices were not, adjusted with the transport cost, and we then identified the over invoicing and under invoicing, possibilities. And that's how the discourse on illicit financial flows also came in. Now, thank you, Ojitabda, for that very generous introduction. And thank you, Prabir, for having me. I am really grateful to the organizers of the Bay of Bengal Economic Dialogue 2021 for inviting me to this very important session. Yesterday, we had a visionary keynote presentation from Professor Rehman Sobhan, and he challenged us to think ahead and think out of box. And Chair, you have also very rightly mentioned that connectivity is a part of regional cooperation, but it's very important. But we cannot also really untie the various connectivities that you have mentioned just now. I read in one of Probir's writing that we have to have a conjunction and coordination of various connectivities, trade connectivity, transport connectivity, investment connectivity. Chair, you have mentioned about grid connectivity, energy connectivity, and also people-to-people connectivity. So from that perspective, I think that today's discourse is very important. I'll make, in my 10 minutes, I'll make 6 quick points. One is that I think we should distinguish between regionalization and regionalism. We are seeing in our region that there are a lot of initiatives towards greater cooperation, towards deepening of our cooperation. But many of these are market driven. But I think that if we want to have the the benefits that we want, and Chair, you have mentioned what is the expectation. I think the expectation in the light of the Sustainable Development Goals our economic growth, inclusive development, and environmentally sustainable development. I think this triangulation is very important. But if that be the case, I think that we cannot leave everything to the markets. I see that many initiatives are being taken within countries or perhaps sub-region, but we don't see that there is a conscious effort to really join the dots. So that will be regionalism, a conscious policy to pursue deepening of cooperation as against market-driven and country-centered initiatives. So this will be my one, that what we need in order to go forward is just not market-driven regionalization of trade and investment, but a conscious effort. And so that brings me to my second point, which is that if that be the case, then our target should be to transform our transport corridors into economic corridors. I think that is the very important in order to translate our comparative advantages into competitive advantages. And for that, we will need, as Chair, you have rightly mentioned, the connectivities. I think triangulation of investment, trade, and transport connectivities will be very important if we really want to transform these transport corridors into economic corridors. Because what I see is that without that regionalism or conscious policies, I think that there are many initiatives. We are having BIBM, then trilateral, then BRI. But if we don't have a conscious policy of coordination, then it will be very difficult, and these might remain just transport corridors and not economic corridors. And in the context of our own countries, I see that Bangladesh is planning to set up 100 special economic zones, but I didn't see that how these zones will be connected with the the economic corridors, and how we can reap the best benefits from this. So this connectivity and triangulation of investment, trade, and transport is very important in this context. That brings me to my third point, which is coordination of policies. Now, I see that there is a lack of coordination of policies. We are doing various things within our borders, but if we really want to connect the transport initiatives that we are taking, BBN motor vehicle agreement and others, I think that coordination of the policies is very important, and that is also at three levels. One is coordination of the policies that we are taking within our borders, so behind the border policies, so that we are taking, and how we coordinate these with other countries. Then coordination of policies at the border, single window, customs clearance, harmonization, standardization, mutual recognition agreement, interoperability of the systems. So all these at the border. Otherwise, these crossing points will be just choking points and control points, not crossing points. So that is another. And beyond the border through various regional initiatives. So I think that at these three levels, behind the border, at the border, and beyond the border, I think that coordination, I see that there are a lot of opportunities. Then the one point that I see is that we don't see in these type of gatherings, or when we talk about connectivities and transport connectivities in particular, more involvement of the private sector. I think that that private sector is a key player, and they really will generate the incomes which we can with which we can underwrite the huge investment. We sometimes forget that all these connectivities and corridors and road networks, these entail huge investment. So how do you really get the returns from the investment? Their involvement of the private sector and identifying the opportunities of investment and trade through these connectivities are very important. And the last point that I will mention within our region, and Professor Rehman Subhan was asking us to think how we can take benefit of all these discrete transport initiatives and connectivities that we are seeing. We have to translate them into seamless connectivities because it involves various modes of connectivities. So what is the regional architecture that we can envision? And I think that here RCEP has given us a very strong signal. There is an opportunity for SAFTA, and since India has not joined RCEP as yet, I think that a SAFTA RCEP bilateral arrangement could be one in our region, which could help us to provide the regional architecture through which we can have a coordinated transport network that is needed here. I often think that, for example, and here Professor Rehman Subhan yesterday also said that the elephant in the room is China. So how can we bring also the Belt and Road Initiative into the initiatives that we are taking now is also becoming very important, and from that perspective also the architecture of RCEP could provide South Asia also a regional window in order to reap the benefits. So I think that, Chair, I raised some of the issues, and the last point that I would mention is that COVID, and we are talking about in the context of COVID and building back better. I think COVID has also shown us the new opportunities. The opportunities of the new economy, and you have mentioned very rightly energy connectivity. I would say digital connectivity will become also another big opportunity as we build back better post-COVID. So I think that is also an area that we should think of. So these were my very few remarks, Chair, and I will look forward to hearing from the eminent panelists who will follow me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mustafizur Rahman. Wonderful. Within this, first of all, you kept time. Thank you very much. And this is a great, art to give a lot within a short time. And Professor Rahman just did that. And I will have my, little comments when I sum up these things. He talked about very important things. In fact, the multimodality of things, multidimensionality of all these aspects, the private sector's involvement, the coordination issues. Each one of them can be in a whole day's discussion. So, and in fact, they are all important, no doubt. So let me go now to the panelists, and let me first invite the way it is. I think it's the first speaker will be, let me go to that. And I think I will follow whatever is there, right, in your schedule. So I invite Mr. So Umezaki, the director of IDE JETRO Japan. Sir, if you can have your deliberations to us. And 7 minutes the organizers have clearly told us. So I will give a signal on the 6th minute, and then I hope things will fall in shape. Over to you, Professor Umezaki.
Thank you very much, Chair. And also, thank you for the organizer to invite me to this session. I would like to share my PowerPoint, but I cannot do it now. Can you check again?
Yeah, you can do it, Umezaki-san, and if you can share your screen.
No, I cannot now.
Actually, you have to get that thing first in your laptop, whatever, the screen first, and then you have to share the screen. Otherwise, it will not come. So you have to upload that in your screen, come back to this, and then share the screen. It will come up.
Yeah, I think they have done it. Yes.
You see?
Yep.
The full screen mode. Okay. Thank you very much. So today, I would like to talk about the India, Myanmar, Thailand trilateral highway based on our recent study in area, Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, to draw some implications for the BIMSTEC. Actually, this project was done, started in 2019 and last year. And also Professor Pravir De of RIS and Dr. Ruth Banomyon of Thammasat University were the member of this project. And also we invited Myanmar Survey Research for this project. Then actually BIMSTEC lies in a very strategic location. The Bay of Bengal is an indispensable segment of the world training route.
Mr. Umezaki, your screen is not shared yet.
Oh, really? Oh. Okay.
Both of your devices are right now co-hosts, so you can actually share in both of them.
Actually, I logged in using my two computers to see the, okay.
Yes, it has come now. Yeah.
But
So you have to open your PowerPoint. Yeah.
Actually, this
great.
is not the one I wanted to share. But
right.
Okay.
It's visible now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, sorry. Then, the Bay of Bengal is an indispensable segment of the world trading route connecting the Asia and Africa and Europe. And also, BIMSTEC consists of the South Asia and Southeast Asia. And it is expected to bridge these two regions. But however, there still remains a major gap between South and Southeast Asia. Then, as a result, the relationship between China and Southeast Asia has been growing, but in relative sense, the relationship between China and South Asia is still limited. There are many modes of connectivity, but and all modes of connectivity can be realized through the utilization of physical infrastructure and institutional arrangement for that. Then today, I would like to focus on the land connectivity by road. This is a trilateral highway. Actually, for this part, the road itself is connected, but some sections require the major upgrading or expansion work. And also, there still remains many old and narrow bridges along the road. So this needs to be addressed. In the part of institutional arrangement, it is expected to have a cross-border transport agreement to allow the motor vehicles from both sides to go into the other side of the border. But this arrangement is not available at this point. And as I already mentioned, my presentation is based on two studies conducted by area. One was published in 2011, and the new one, was just published last year. So I was in charge of both of these projects. Then, in the first project, we conducted we covered various modes of connectivity, not just the land connectivity, but also we consider some importance of the maritime connectivity, particularly connecting the Dawei and Chennai as a part of the Mekong India Economic Corridor. But this time, the new project focused on the land connectivity, particularly the trilateral highway, starting from More in Manipur state of India to Tamu in Myanmar and go through the country and then to go into Thailand from Myawaddy to Mesot. This is the original alignment of the IMT trilateral highway. Then, as you see, more than 99% of this trilateral highway is in Myanmar. You see? Then, I'd like to show you, share the update of how it looks like. So this is, these photos are taken just 1 year ago. Yeah, January last year. Then this is between Tamu and Kalewa. So-called India-Myanmar Friendship Road, constructed by Border Road Organization of India several years ago. Then as you see, most of the road is paved, well paved, but there still remains more than 60, around 70 old narrow bridges. Then from Kalewa to Mandalay, there are 3 optional routes. The number 1, Gango route, is the oldest route and currently the most frequently used route. The number 2, Ye-U-Shuebo route. This is the shortest one, but it doesn't pass the big city, Moniwa, which is the capital city of the Zagain state. Then the currently number 3, Yaji route, is regarded as the main route for this IMT trilateral highway. But this route is still under very significant upgrading work. So this photo is taken last year. So there are lots of big construction sites along the road. Then according to this signboard, this route is expected to be completed by May this year, 2021. But I don't know whether they can meet this deadline or not. As you see, there are some mountainous sections. Then even in these sections, roads are being expanded. To wrap up the physical infrastructure, most of the original alignment of the trilateral highway just a moment, has been recently upgraded or has been under upgrading work. Then in the whole section, starting from Tamu to Mesot, so the completed project includes the bypass connecting Myawaddy and Kokare. This was one of the most terrible sections in the last study. When
one more minute.
Okay.
1 more minute for that. The
Then,
first round.
Okay, so the remaining bottlenecks are the replacement of the 69 bridges along the Tamu-Kalewa road. This needs to be done by Indian government, and also upgrading work between Tatong and Aindu. This is along the Thai side of the road. We conducted some simulation studies, but the economic impact of the trilateral highway per se is not very significant. So that means infrastructure development itself is not enough to take the best advantage of this road. This is the scenario. The final remarks may, the priority needs to be placed on the security concerns, including the Myanmar problems, the coup and Rohingya. So with this, we cannot take advantage of the connectivity projects. Then in the post-COVID era, digital connectivity, land connectivity, air connectivity will be more important. So I cannot talk everything about that, but please take a look at some of these. Okay, I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Mr. Umezaki. It's short but very illuminative. I mean, it's very. We are enlightened about this portion of this IMT. What's the position right now? And I guess due to COVID and etc., things have slowed down. So we will hear more about it in the course of our discussion. So let me now go over to Achud Bhandari, who will the next panelist. So, Mr. Bhandari, if you can just come in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would appreciate the opportunity to say a few words in this session, and my perspective will be basically going to be from Bhutan, but I will take into consideration some of the points that were shared with us in trying to focus our attention. The first point is, so far, this is the second substantive day, and if you take into account the first day, opening session, 3 days, I think almost every session there has been an emphasis on connectivity. And that underscores the importance of this topic for advancing regional cooperation within BIMSTEC, or be it within SAARC. And for a country like Bhutan, which is a mountainous country, which is a landlocked country, I cannot overemphasize the importance of connectivity, particularly the route connectivity. And in this respect, I may just mention a few points that we in Bhutan have done over the past 5 to 10 years. Firstly, we have expanded our internal road networks, especially the major highways, so that the transportation is much more faster and smooth. We are doing, we have constructed some dry ports to add to the facilities at the border points. One is functional, 2 are under construction, and for one, a feasibility study is going to be completed this month. And also, we are working on an electronic custom management system, so that the facilities at the customs in the border can be improved, and clearance will be faster. And also, we have a plan to move towards the national single window that was mentioned earlier by one of the speakers. E-commerce policy has been more or less completed and is waiting for government approval. And Bhutan is trying to acquire another international gateway in order to improve our connectivity both within Bhutan and rest of the world. So these are some of the major things that Bhutan has done over the past 5 to 10 years, and also some of these programs are ongoing. Now, in terms of regional connectivity for Bhutan, the road connectivity is so important within the neighboring countries. And in this context, I would like to mention 3 or 4 corridors through which Bhutan trade flows. The first one, obviously, between Phuentsholing, which is our border town, and Jaigaon in West Bengal, to Kolkata, which is our major international port. Some work has been done in this area through ADB assistance, and the Indian government itself has carried out a lot of work on this, so the road is better. But there are other problems, and sometimes at the national level we have perfect, good relations, we have agreements, but when it comes to local level, there are always some problem or the other, which hinders a smooth traffic flow, in terms of movement between Phuentsholing and Kolkata. The second one is between Bhutan and Bangladesh in in the border of Chengrabanda and Burimari and Fulbari and Banglaband, which is very near to Siliguri. This is a very important route for us for trade with Bangladesh. And we have been using it for so long. And this route has been improved considerably, again, through ADB assistance. And from the eastern part of Bhutan, southeastern, we have a route that goes via Shillong to down to Dauki and across into Bangladesh. We have been using it to some extent, but the traffic is low. And finally, we have some central route we have identified recently, a riverine route, from Jogi Ghopa in using the Brahmaputra and down to Dhubri. These are especially useful for us to transport heavy, stones and constructed materials that go from Bhutan to Bangladesh. So these are our lifeline, and also, since we already have an agreement with Bangladesh to use their ports like Chittagong and Mongla, in the long run, improvement of these facilities will, would hopefully improve our connectivity and contribute to faster and better flow of trade, both within the neighboring countries and with the outside world. It's important to underscore that Bhutan's trade is overwhelmingly focused within the region, especially with India and Bangladesh. Probably about 90% of the trade is especially in terms of export. About 90% of Bhutan's exports are destined to Bangladesh and India. And even in imports, it's maybe about 80%. So this underscores the importance of improving these corridors for Bhutan's trade. Now, in terms of air connectivity, obviously Bhutan, is landlocked, and I can remember days it used to take us 2 days to get to Calcutta. Now we can get there in half an hour, in 45 minutes.
You have one more minute, Mr. Bhandari. One more minute.
Yeah. So we need to improve air connectivity as well for cargo and tourism. Maritime connectivity definitely, needs improvement. In terms of facilities in Calcutta port, they have improved, but there is a need for further upgradation. It takes many days, between 4 to 8 days, to clear consignments from the port, which is long, and add the transportation cost, time to Bhutan. It takes over 8 to 10 days, even between sometimes. So there is a need to focus port facilities, including approach routes and other things. Digital connectivity and energy, I have already mentioned, and as Bhutan is a net energy exporter, it would be very important to see that cooperation in energy training and grid are taken up at a very at a serious level. On the master plan, I think there are many projects planned under the master plan. The BIMSTEC master plan, we need to prioritize them and also see what resources can be made available to implement them. The final one is about the transport and transshipment agreement that is under consideration in BIMSTEC. This will be very important for us. And I would like to say that in terms of the MVA within BBIN, perhaps we can learn from whatever experience we have gained from BBIN MVA. And in this respect, I'd like to point out a study that was done by World Bank very recently, South Asia towards a connected Eastern South Asia. It makes a lot of shares a lot of information about the current BBIN agreement within the sub-region, and also what lessons we could learn. Finally, Mr. Chairman, custom cooperation is absolutely necessary. This was mentioned by the previous speaker, and in this area, ADB has done a wonderful job within SASEC. And I know it is also doing it within BIMSTEC. We need to improve coordination and internet connectivity so that documents can be exchanged. We have different platforms, there's no common platform for sharing these documents. Unless we move into that, the clearance is always going to be time consuming. This is all I want to say at the moment, and maybe later on we can add to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhandari. Thank you. It shows the problems of any landlocked country, and naturally, the problems which you have mentioned are very real problems. And let's hope that something comes out of this deliberation too. Now I go over to Dr. Anusha Bosu Roy Chaudhuri from ORF. Well, Dr. Bosu Roy Chaudhuri, it's all over to you. 7 minutes to begin with.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ajit Abuda, and thank you so much, Prabir, for giving me such opportunity to share some of my ideas with you all. And I'm also grateful to the organizers for such opportunity. Well, we all know that with the resurgence of strategic and economic interest in the Bay of Bengal region, in recent times, BIMSTEC is gaining its salience. And keeping this fact in consideration, the connectivity is one of the most significant issues that Ajit Abuda and also Professor Rahman also have already touched upon, that the holistic aspect or the holistic face of connectivity while we are talking about Bay of Bengal. Both continental connectivity, maritime connectivity, along with other digital human capital, all these aspects of connectivity. But now within next few minutes, what I'm going to share with you is some important facets and some recommendations in the sphere of maritime connectivity, which I think it is an important domain to talk about. Okay, though it is true that the extent of maritime connectivity among the rim states in this region varies, and often these links are subject to political shifts which affect seamless operations. Nonetheless, three major domain, in three major domain, actually several developments are taking place nowadays. And these domains are segments are port infrastructure development, coastal shipping arrangements, and inland waterways, and its linkage with maritime connectivity. So with these preliminary words, if we go back to the individual initiatives taken by the individual member states in this domain, we will see that Bangladesh has already taken initiative to develop its major two old ports, that is, these are Chittagong ports and Mongla ports, and have taken new initiatives to develop Paira, that's the third seaport. And of course, apart from development of Pangao Continental Terminal for coastal shipping, if we look at Myanmar is also taking initiative to develop its only one major port, that is Yangon. And apart from Yangon, all of us, we know that how China is heavily investing in the development of Chakpyo, and also India has already invested heavily in the development of Kaladan port. And when we last visited Kaladan port 3 years back, then the port was 99% completed, but it's because of, as Umezaki-san has already talked about, the problems in connecting borderlands of India with, the Sitwe province, and there are 69 bridges which are still not yet been reconstructed, and because of this delay, Kaladan port is not being utilized at its fullest. So far as Colombo is concerned, Sri Lanka is concerned, as we all know that how Colombo has been emerging as a lead transshipment hub in the Bay of Bengal region. And in this particular context, I think India and Sri Lanka, they are heavily dependent on each other, as we know that 30% of outbound trade from India is going via Colombo, and 70% of inbound trade from other parts of the world to India, it's coming via Sri Lanka. So far as Thailand is concerned, it's very interesting because when we visited Thailand, we have got impression that Thailand is heavily investing to develop its Ranong port, apart from Bangkok port and Lam Chabang. And we know the location of Ranong is very close to Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So interesting connectivity route may come up very soon. I'll be talking about this shortly. Well, so far as India is concerned, the policymakers are pondering how the vision of Sagar, which seeks growth for all, can be utilized or can be made mutually reinforcing with project Sagarmala, which we all know that Sagarmala is basically the port development, internal port development project. And out of 12 major ports, I think all of us, we know how India is heavily investing to develop its internal ports like Kolkata, Haldia, Visakhapatnam, Paradip, Chennai, Krishnapatnam for the Bay of Bengal initiative. Well, now if we look to the Bay of Bengal as a region and the regional initiative, we know that the revitalization of Bay of Bengal is a collective responsibility. And of course, the Bay member states, they have realized this necessity, and they have engaged ADB in this developmental initiative, and we know about the entire trajectory, how ADB is planning through their study on this particular region to develop transport projects. They have taken up 167 projects also out of 167. 66 projects are in the pipeline in priority list. And we also know that in 2016 in Goa retreat, Bay of Bengal leaders, they have taken initiative for coastal shipping agreement. The coastal shipping agreement actually is a landmark agreement which has been signed between India and Bangladesh in 2015, and which has paved the way to think of more such initiatives, not only between India, Bangladesh, but also between India, Thailand, and also between Thailand and Myanmar. And in that case, when we visited Thailand, we spoke to all the stakeholders. They are very much interested to develop the coastal shipping lines between Ranong and Chittagong, Ranong and Sitwe. And if it can be established, then we have a kind of cobweb network of so far as coastal shipping, which is in another way renamed as short sea shipping. Well, with these few words, if we go to the other countries, as Mr. Bhandari correctly pointed out, it is about landlockness of Nepal and Bhutan. India is aggressively investing to develop this network, and it has invested in the port of Haldia, Kolkata, to develop. But it's true that the congestion, because of the congestion in the old city of Calcutta, the connecting hinterland connectivity, it's not at all good. So it causes a delay. But definitely at the same time, apart from government initiative, private group is coming up, say for example Adani, and definitely Concor and Assocham, they are also taking initiatives so far as coastal shipping is concerned. And very interesting information is, as India has relaxed its cabotage law, I can share the details later on in the question answer session. So coastal shipping has become very, very lucrative at this moment. And as because we know that in terms of Sitwe port, Kaladan port, as this is not at all functioning at this moment. So in terms of Ashuganj port, we can utilize it very much, and India has taken a right decision to engage Ashuganj port to develop northeastern connectivity. Well, if we shift our attention from coastal shipping to another very important aspect, which was not really considered an important area in BIMSTEC domain, that's the inland waterways. And why it has not considered as a very productive domain? Because it was initially confined within India, Bangladesh, because we know that India, Bangladesh, long time back in 1972, they have signed one protocol agreement. and also it is confined within India, Bangladesh, and extended to Myanmar. But nowadays things are changing, though the pace is very slow. But now National Waterways 1 has been connected to National Waterways 2, and also Nepal has shown its interest to be connected within this system. So if the rivers like Gharghara, Koshi, Gandak, they will be incorporated in the entire system of waterways, inland waterways, then we can have a kind of cobweb connectivity network within the Bay of Bengal region. And Bay of Bengal region, we can then imagine the riverine ports, how riverine ports will be connected with the maritime ports. Then the entire holistic picture of maritime connectivity will be coming up in our vision. So while portraying this present situation, I think it is time to understand how to further strengthen collaborative effort.
You have one more minute, Anushua, yes. 1 more minute.
Yes, to have a lively and integrated maritime space. And in post-COVID situation, the importance of connectivity will increase as every member state will try to work on disrupted supply chain. And in this context, I would like to put forth certain necessary requisitions, including infrastructural development, need for digitization in port logistics, need for linkages between maritime ports and hinterland connectivity. My first proposition: efforts should be made to have a Bay of Bengal Ship Owners and Ship Operators Association. My proposition 2, there is a need to formulate a common coastal development plan, as we know that we don't have at this moment any kind of maritime disputes between India, Bangladesh, between Bangladesh, Myanmar. So the congenial atmosphere is existing. So why don't we utilize this political scenario? The third proposition is there is a scope to integrate inland waterway system with maritime port sector and develop a synergy in between. Fourth one, need to have a regional governance framework aimed at harnessing good order. And my last point to conclude here is there is in these contexts, what is important is to understand the economic benefit out of all these connectivity projects. Here lies the need for trade generation. Development of ports, this is not the only thing, but it should be connected with trade generation. Otherwise, the entire benefit will not be realized by us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anushua. In fact, very stimulating talk on your part. Lots of suggestions. In fact, the last 5 things which you mentioned, Bay of Bengal Ship Owners Associations, novel concept. I enjoyed it. I mean, this concept itself is quite new to me. Feasibility is a different thing. Ideas. We are just, our duty and task here is to float ideas, and then obviously the feasibility of the ideas, and then let's see how it goes. I now go to our 4th speaker, Mr. Ruth Banomyang from Thailand. Ruth, if you can just enlighten us with your 7 minutes initial dialogue, and then you can come back later when you have questions. Over to you, Ruth.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank Prabir and the organizer for inviting me to join this panel on regional connectivity. I think that when we talk about connectivity today, it has really become a big buzzword, and everyone is talking about connectivity. And there's always issues related to what does connectivity encompasses. In some of the opening statement, yes, I've heard about physical, institutional, people-to-people connectivity, which are, of course, part of the connectivity framework. But one aspect that we don't talk sufficiently enough are the service providers. The previous panelists spoke a bit about it, but actually the logistics service providers will play a key role in enabling these the connectivities between the various countries. But if you allow me to go back a bit, when we look at the physical connectivity, the big challenge is this, is everyone understand it's part about the infrastructure, but what I would also like to say is that you also need to have the necessary logistics facilities in the infrastructure connectivities. What I mean there is that we need to also look at distribution centers, free zone, inland clearance depot, dry ports. All these are also part of the infrastructure connectivity. It's not just building a new port or building a new airport or having a pipeline. So you also need that part of what we call light infrastructure. And probably the most challenging connectivity aspect is the institutional one. Yes, currently there's no real regional agreement that facilitate the movement of transport between the various countries. There are efforts, but it's still not easy. And I think it would be beneficial for BIMSTEC to look at the experiences both in ASEAN and in the greater Mekong sub-region. I think there are a lot of lessons learned there of things that have worked, but also of things that are not working at all. Because what we see from the experience of ASEAN and the GMS is a lot of agreement, very nice pictures between the leaders of the countries, but then in terms of implementation, it is not really working. So this is something that we can learn, and so that these recurring problems do not reappear. Another key point when we look at connectivity is, again, this is a challenge, is you both have internal connectivity within the country, then you have the regional connectivity within BIMSTEC, but then you also have the external connectivity with third countries, which needs to be considered. And a lot of time when we look at connectivity, especially from an Asian Development Bank perspective, very often it is restricted, or I would say it is scoped from the perspective of a corridor approach. But corridors, again, may not reflect the actual trade flows. And that has always been a problem in the GMS when they have agreed on economic corridors. And then after that, they start crying when there are no goods actually moving along those corridors. So it is very important to have the private sector involved. It is very critical because the private sector are the one who are generating the volume, generating the connection, are doing the investment. But of course, the private sector cannot do anything on their own if governments do not work together, such as in the case of the physical infrastructure. Another key point is this, is even though there is a BIMSTEC master plan that is going to be launched, if you look at the case of ASEAN, ASEAN has had master plans since the 1990s, and we keep, adding and adding because so many things have not been successful. So again, I go back to this issue of we need to go back and learn from what works within the context. Of course, each regional grouping is different, but there are a lot of lessons learned here. And when we talk about connectivity, another topic that has not been addressed at all is this issue of liberalization. Why do I talk about liberalization? Because we can have the best policy to say connectivity is going to happen, but then, and we want to be more competitive, that means businesses and services also needs to be liberalized. But I'm not sure if everyone has the appetite for that. And probably my last point for now is that when we look at, for example, we talk about customs cooperation, there are standards, there is an agreement, which is the revised Kyoto Convention. And the big question is how well are all the members countries currently implementing the revised Kyoto Convention? And it goes even further with the World Trade Organization Trade Facilitation Agreement in terms of its implementation. Because yes, we can look at it from a regional perspective, but we must not forget there are also multilateral agreements that have been signed by the members countries that, if applied fully, then will enable connectivity to happen. So I think I leave it for now at this specific juncture. And yes, I will welcome back any question when they come. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Banamian. It's, we touched upon very important points, especially the institutional thing. That's always there. Liberalization is part of it, no doubt. And without services, creating physical infrastructure makes no sense. If it has to be operational, what we call facilitators. In order to facilitate these things, you need services. It's all kinds of services are needed. But which comes first? Obviously, the infrastructure has to be created, but then the services have to support it. No doubt about it. We will come back to it maybe surely later on with some more issues on this. So last but not the least, I would invite Ravi Shankar Saiju to have his opinions on this topic. Saiju, please.
Thank you, Chair. Do you hear me? My voice coming?
Yes.
Yes,
Perfectly
sir.
okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and distinguished panelists, participants, dear colleagues. Actually, it's my pleasure to be a part of this event. And I would like to thank giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts in these important issues. I also hope that this discussion would help to identify path to enhance the connectivity in the BIMSTEC region. Connectivity unites a region. It does more than enhance the trade and prosperity. It must be noted that connecting all the countries with one mode of transportation will not only be the highly costly, but also create hindrance in the implementation. Connecting all the countries in the region is possible by utilizing existing routes and linking them with the new feasible routes through the various mode of transportation, road, railways, inland waterways, and coastal shipping also. So the development of long-term inter-regional connectivity must be the objective of regional and sub-regional formal agreements like BIMSTEC. To institutionalize the process of regional economic cooperation through the multimodal connectivity, bilateral, trilateral, and regional agreement related to the transportation, logistics, insurance, and trade must be created, signed, and ratified also. Without proper agreements and treaties, countries show tendencies to withdraw from time to time. During the fourth BIMSTEC summit held in Kathmandu, Nepal in August 2018, the leaders of the BIMSTEC member states emphasized to establish seamless multimodal transportation linkage and smooth and synchronize the simplified transit facilities through the development and expansion of modernization of highway, railway, waterways, sea routes, airways in the region, and directed to speed up the efforts to conclude the BIMSTEC coastal shipping agreement and the BIMSTEC motor vehicle agreement as early as possible, taking into account the special circumstances and need of the member states. The BIMSTEC connectivity master plan aims to examine the economic viability of land routes. The master plan also discussed the inland waterways connectivity, which will give Nepal and Bhutan easy access to the Bay of Bengal. It also has a provision for economic activities and digital connectivity. All these bilateral connectivity projects will be building block of BIMSTEC connectivity. So all the bilateral projects between these countries should be included in the master plan. It is necessary to find out the missing links in this bilateral connectivity. The completion of BIMSTEC's coastal shipping agreement will pave the way for a seamless movement in the cargo and passenger vehicle in the Bay of Bengal. Early completion of BIMSTEC motor vehicle agreement will add to a huge momentum to the BIMSTEC economic connectivity. Next, rail and digital connectivity have immense potential to enhance the trade in the region, and beyond, BIMSTEC countries may negotiate a BIMSTEC railway agreement along with it a regional air transportation agreement in the cargo and passenger service will promote faster mobility of the goods, services in the sectors like tourism, health, education, and maritime connectivity. Maritime connectivity is another area which requires our utmost attention. A regional network of ports in the Bay of Bengal may be helpful to share the best practices and will also assist in the reaching the better coordination. Managing cross-border corridor is another challenge. Border infrastructure and connectivity is another area that needs to be drastic reform and development. Many border crossing points do not have integrated checkposts. Poor road connections, technical issue related to customs and tariff, etc., also pose a challenge in these regards. A surge in traffic may cause a damage to the existing infrastructure in sub-region since it is not equipped to handle the additional loads. Digitalizing the trade process in the BIMSTEC would be the next step forward to make a giant leap forwards, a paperless trade environment. This would reduce the vulnerability of the global and regional supply chain. In this regard, the framework of agreement on facilitation of cross-border paperless trade in Asia and the Pacific, Asia and Pacific serve a unique platform for the member states of the ISCAP region. In this regards, all the member countries need to develop a harmonized regulatory framework, legal framework, and digital framework, and even implementation of digital signature also. Synergy between the governments for synchronization of existing bilateral agreement on the trade and transit with regional agreement is very critical. Coordination between the interministerial department as well as between the central and state agency may turn out to be a problem in implementing the agreement. So this needs to be considered. A leveraged visa regime and efforts to improve synergy between the market in the different countries are just some of the other steps that will have to be taken. Measures taken to combat insurgency and drug and narcotics smuggling can impose a serious threat to the implementation of a regional agreement. So proper arrangement has to be made. Nepal and India has successfully piloted implementation of electronic cargo tracking system in its transit cargo. It is still in piloting stage and implemented in the import of Nepal only. It has decreased the time and transit movement and making the paperless. Previously in the Calcutta, Nepal importer has to submit 8 kind of original document. Now only 2 documents they have to they can upload in the systems. They don't have to submit the original document. Besides, the point of interaction in Calcutta port and even the custom was 30. Now it has come to the 0 now. It's seamless, and they need to have a signature of 20 signature in the different documents. Now it has reduced substantially. Now the letter of this system is still in piloting stage, and there is the letter of action to amend the existing transit treaty between Nepal and India is the final stage, making use of ECTS mandatory in export and import and in all mode of transport. This can be a model in regional transportation connectivity in this region also. Besides, there is another, in Nepal and India has already completed, draft of the consolidation of different LOEs that Nepal and India has. In that consolidation, another feature that has been added, India has, principally agreed to provide, to use the inland waterways in the 3 parts, one in Sahibganj, Kalughat, and Banaras. And once this consolidation of the LOE is signed, then Nepal can use the inland waterways of the Indias also. So that will have another features in this connectivity also. And besides, Nepal has also requested India for the providing 2 gateway port, additional gateway port. That is, one is Dhamra and second is Mundra. Most probably there is a positive signal is coming. Very soon India is going to permit the Dhamra first for Nepal, and that will be one of the game changer for us. So that is also a positive signal that we are having. And besides, I also want to highlight one thing, and that is the Nepal is preparing now the comprehensive logistic policy. So we are also, Nepal is also trying to harmonize logistic system with the other neighboring countries. It is a positive sign, and government of Nepal is planning to bring this policy within this fiscal years, and that will definitely change the whole logistic system and supply chain management system within the countries, and that will also facilitate the cross-border system also. Here also I would like to slightly highlight the custom cooperation, because custom cooperation is key to regional trade. It is the integral part of trade facilitation and economic integration. It is important at all regional level and sub-regional level and bilateral level also. Actually, SAARC Custom Mutual Assistance Agreement was signed in 2005, but it is not functioning well. So BIMSTEC needs to develop a regional level custom cooperation agreement also. SASEC custom subgroup was established in 2013. Its meeting is held every year and contributing in capacity building, cooperations, and exchange of the export declaration data also. It has also facilitated in border level meeting to facilitate cross-border clearance. India and Nepal is already started piloting the data exchange system also. At the bilateral level, Nepal has signed custom mutual assistance agreement with China, and the agreement with India and Bangladesh is in the process. Nepal has also recently, launched the single window system. So it will also facilitate the cross-border trade and custom clearance also. So custom cooperation among the BIMSTEC countries must be harnessed for a strengthened economic integration and seamless movement of the goods. I believe that today's discussion will find out option to strengthening the regional integration and cooperation among the BIMSTEC countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saiju. Very important point. But the core point which you are harping on is multimodalities. That's very important, and the cooperation. Basically, customs cooperation, logistics, comprehensive policies, very important issues. Now, we have some time. It's about 20 minutes left in our session. So what I will do, there are not too many questions which I can see here in the chat box. Let me just, pick some of them. I will reserve my questions or my comments towards the end. Let me start with the reverse order, some of the questions which were asked, and then I will give you maybe a couple of minutes or 2-3 minutes to answer your things. Well, the first one, I start with Mr. Saiju first, because you are the last one to speak in the session. One question is from Dr. Probir De, the status of MVA right now. That's one question. Another question is asked by Dr. Somesh Mathur, whether Nepal is gaining from SAFTA deal. But that, I think, is a broader question. It's more on regional cooperation, not exactly on the connectivity thing. So I just don't put it that way to Mr. Saiju as such, but answer the question on MVA if you can. And if there are more questions, we can come back later. Status of MVA.
Thank you. I mean, it's a MBA between BBI and MBA you're talking about?
BBI. BBI.
Yes. So actually, definitely, I mean, there was a lot of discussion going on within the country. So in the BBI and MBA, there was some confusion among the different stakeholders on that part. So now, concerned authorities, they are also, consulting with the concerned private sector also. There are some confusion with them. They thought that BBIN MVA motor vehicle agreement provisions that will allow the different vehicles from other countries to freely fly in the Nepal side, and that will directly hamper the business here in Nepal. But that is not the reality. They didn't know the actual situation over here, isn't it? So there are a lot of provision on a reciprocity basis also. So we are government of Nepal, and even we are also trying to convince them, and most probable the negotiation is going on. And the last negotiation, last part, this India has drafted the protocol on cargo. That is, that discussion and that protocol is going on within the concerned authorities here. Most probable, that will be positively concluded.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Saiju, for a very brief but very pointed reply. I go to Mr. Banomyong now, there are, questions from Dr. Dey again. One question is that the Thai trucking industry is supposed to be somewhat putting up barriers for this trilateral highway. Opinion. I will come to the same thing to Mr. Umezaki. But the other question which is there, it's, ASEAN has introduced ACTS in November 2020. And what is the implication to Bay of Bengal countries? Will Myanmar join ACTS? Otherwise, what will happen to that? Dr. Ruth.
Okay, so allow me to answer your questions in reverse order. So for the introduction of the ACTS, what has happened is that the ASEAN Secretariat has received support from the European Union under a project called Arise Plus. And they've been piloting it and then working on it, but still, there are still challenges in terms of the actual implementation. Will Myanmar join ACTS? I would say this: Myanmar is a signatory to the ASEAN Framework Agreement for the facilitation of goods in transit. For the custom transit system, they are also a party to, but they were not selected for the pilot phase. And with the situation that is happening now, especially with European Union money, I doubt it very much that Myanmar will be able to join the ACTS in the near future, maybe a bit further down the road. So that's to answer the first question. To answer the second question, I would say this: it's not really from the perspective of the Thai truckers that are not supporting the trilateral highway. What is the problem is they worry about the standards of the truck, because in each of the countries, the standards of the trucks are not the same. The coverage for insurance if the trucks are going to move, and also the qualification of the driver. So all these things needs to be harmonized first. Then secondly, what is also very important from the perspective of the Thai truckers is two things. One is, if a Thai truck, for example, goes into Myanmar to go into India, when will that truck come back? Will they ever see their truck back again? So that's one of their worries. And then the second part is this: is when you're doing business, normally you don't fully pay for the truck. You go to a leasing company, and the real owner of the truck is a financial institution, and the financial institution will not allow the truck to leave the country's border. So there's a lot of, I think, lots of details that we haven't really thought about, but that are very practical details that at the moment still hampers this flow of trucking between the countries.
Thank you, Dr. Ruth. Again, very precise answer. That's exactly what is expected now from all this. Those of you who are really working on this for a long time. I put now, before I come to Onusu, I put this because it's a related thing to Mr. Umezaki. This same thing as, do you feel that there are some real barriers to these trilateral highways coming from local interests? That's number one. The other is, this is a question which is also put by Dr. Prabir Dey. If Bangladesh is to join the trilateral highway, and given the present situation in Myanmar, what's the practical, future of this trilateral highway? If you take a medium-term view, what's going to happen? What's your view on this?
Okay, thank you. Actually, regardless of the status of Bangladesh, so as long as Myanmar is in this current situation, it is already a big problem for the future of the trilateral highway. Actually, some of Japanese companies are starting to be thinking about the commitment with Myanmar. So this is already a warning stage for the trilateral highway. Then, what is the another question?
No, this is the local hurdles. For example, this Thai truck industry questions. What do you think about this?
It's already answered by Dr. Lutz, but actually, similar thing already we observed in the IMTGT. This is not India, Myanmar, Thailand. This is Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand growth triangle. So some of the passenger cars were allowed to move from the Malay Peninsula, Malaysia, to Sumatra Island of Indonesia. Then they never coming back to Malaysia. That was the reality. Then because of that, the kind of transport facilitation was stopped in the IMTGT. So it is, it sounds funny, but it can happen. So that's that's what I think. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, to Anushwa, this is a question which Shomesh Mathur asked. This is the Holdia to Brahmaputra. The Holdia is a port, and then Brahmaputra, this internal waterway. What's the future of that? Can this be linked to this, Bay of Bengal initiative? Is there a future to this? Anushwa, are you there?
Hello.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes. You
Yes.
are audible. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Visible as well?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much for raising this interesting question and critical as well. Well, I think you must be aware of the fact that Indian government is taking a special initiative which is called Jalmarg Vikas project. Through Jalmarg Vikas project, Indian government is initiating to connect National Waterway 1 with National Waterway 2. And National Waterway 2 connecting, Varanasi and also Kolkata port into the protocol route. Well, when we are talking in terms of Brahmaputra, I think one of the major issues that is coming up front is the problem of dredging. And that's why Indian government has also taken initiative in collaboration with Assam government and also Inland Waterways Authority and National Highway Authority for these dredging management. And we all know that India is also intending to incorporate Barak River into the entire gamut of inland waterways connectivity. But while we have started working on inland waterways, we have come to know there are several other issues which are really, really important to discuss. One is definitely, apart from dredging is the trade generation. If we have a good inland waterway network, then we also at the same time must have some good list of trading items. But as of now, there are very few items are being traded through these inland waterways. Why? Because there is no demand. And the entire route is, I'm talking about NW1, the entire route is, predominantly is characterized by one-way traffic, which means it's dominated by Bangladeshi vessels, and they are coming with their products, their cargo, in Kolkata, and their outbound vessels, with only full of fly ash. So this is the situation at this moment. And when we started working on these connectivity projects, we have also list of proposals how we can take initiative to include some other products or cargoes in the list, say for example garments. And very recently we have seen that both the governments, they have agreed to have the garment materials, cotton materials in the list which will be traded in these through this route. So apart from this, another important factor is all-time navigability, and that's why dredging is very, very important to deal with. And at this moment, both the governments, India and Bangladesh, On 80:20 proportion, they have agreed 80% will be responsibility of Indian government, 20% will be responsibility of Bangladesh government to take up this dredging so far as Brahmaputra is concerned. So, miles to go to have this kind of navigable, connectivity through inland waterways. But certainly, several initiatives both the governments have taken.
Thank you, Anushwa. Let me go to Professor Mustafizur Rahman. Do you have anything to say on this, all this discussion which you heard? Any afterthought?
Thank you. I think it was quite a learning experience, and particularly would like to mention that our friends who have talked about the trilateral highway and the challenges. I think there are a lot of learnings for us. Just a couple of points. I think Anushwa has mentioned about the coastal shipping agreement, and it's an important development, obviously, and the other initiatives which are being taken. But I would like to also add that Anushwa mentioned about connecting NW1 and NW2. In that context, I think one of the major challenges is that there are common rivers, which flows between India and Bangladesh, and I think that the need for a cooperative approach with regard to what is happening in the upper riparian country, meaning India, and its possible impacts on lower riparian countries like Bangladesh is also very important. So I think that whilst we do take initiatives in terms of navigation, which Anusha rightly mentioned, dredging of the rivers, etc., but also river projects and connecting projects which are being taken in India. We do hope that this will also be consulted with Bangladesh with regard to possible implications. So that is part of the broader cooperation. And also Anusha mentioned about the Ashugunj River Port, which is very important as a multimodal connectivity with the Northeast. But here, the challenge, for example, is that what I was mentioning is, you see, the phasing and sequencing and the parallel initiatives that we need to undertake. Initially, we thought that this will be the best and most cost-effective linkage between western part of India and through Bangladesh to Northeast. And then we find that now no one is using it. Over the last 5 years, only 8 shipments were there, because we didn't build the Ashugunj International River Port, the facilities, warehousing facilities, multimodal, various infrastructure. And also from Ashugunj to Agartala, this 35-kilometer road was also not up to the mark and not ready for the heavy, cargo, etc. So what I'm telling is that whilst we talk about connectivity and the various components, the need for sequencing, phasing, simultaneous, joint ventures, these are becoming very important. Otherwise, you see, if it is because transport, multimodal transport is a link. So that chain is as strong as its weakest point. So if you have a rupture at one point, then you can't use the link. So I think that is something also which we are learning from the trilateral as well. And one point which Mr. Bhandari mentioned, I think, I think we can also add that at Banglabandha is also being brought under rail network. So that will also add another dimension to the road linkage which is there. And I think this is a very good recent development. And in recent times, for example, India has provided transit facilities to Nepal and Bhutan to use our ports, Chiragang, Mongla, and Paira. I think I think fertilizer consignment was very recently sent to Nepal as well. So I think that various initiatives are being taken, but I see that the need for coordination is becoming very important, and sometimes we don't have that architecture. And that will become more important if Bangladesh, which has expressed its intention to join trilateral highway, but it was very rightly mentioned by our friend that given the recent developments in Myanmar, it might become very challenging. But we hope that because that is a very good opportunity, not only for India to be connected, but also for Bangladesh to take advantage of the ASEAN market, and particularly from the perspective of the BIMSTEC free trade agreement, which is being negotiated. So overall, my take is that many very good initiatives are being taken, many very encouraging developments, but we do need more broader institutional architecture in order to have greater coordination to be able to reap the benefits, the potential benefits that are there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Professor Raman. It's very well thought out comments on your part. I can't take more questions now because we are towards the end, and I take this opportunity to give you my 2 pence on it towards the end. Certain things I am hearing that for the last 15-20 years, multimodal transport and seamless connectivity. So what's the problem really? I mean, what exactly is holding up the multimodality to take place? Think about a country like India. We within India could not promote the multimodality which we find throughout Europe. That's an example, or maybe in some of the Asian countries. What's the problem inside? So first we solve the multimodality, what is holding up the multimodality in transport sector, for example, within a nation. And then we will have to think about whether that can be replicated. That always the good things can be replicated, can be scaled up, and the bad things have to be given away. But that's I am not sure really. I mean, this word is spoken, but the real problems where it is holding up in our Bay of Bengal has to be more pointedly discussed. The other point which Professor Raman mentioned is very important: market-driven versus state responsibility. I guess it's complementary. All of us know that this crowding out business which we talk about doesn't work always in the long term. In short term, it is a $1 investment in the public infrastructure crowds in so much private investment. In connectivity, this is so important. How would you make it complementary? What are the issues of this complementarity? Not only these issues, but think about the private sector investment. We need it. Think about the government's share in GDP in all these countries, shrinking day by day. So you cannot expect that the government will take up all this infrastructure investment. You get so little from the GDP, you cannot give more than that. It's difficult proposition. But then this whole question of, say, private-public partnership, PPP models, the models are so different for not only, say, a road sector, there may be 15 different models of PPP. We need careful consideration. What is holding up this private-public partnership? Easy to say, easy to borrow examples from other parts of the world, but then coming to the reality which we have here, we have to really talk it out very carefully. What's really is the important. Third thing, the changing world, liberalizing world, now protectionist. As you can see, the world is changing. This thing has come up. Trade investment are complementary to other physical connectivity and digital and service sector connectivity. They are interrelated. We cannot talk everything here. As I said, we are concentrating now on regional connectivity. We are not really talking about the regional cooperation. That was the subject matter of some other, session here. But then this becomes so important. This linkage between the other kinds of reform. I mean, given the protectionist move on the part of so many countries in the world now, where do we stand? All these models which we talk about, liberalization and etc., have been put to serious test now. I mean, these questions have come up in recent years. What's the importance of WTO? How are we viewing all this? So this has implications about this cooperation in the connectivity. This question, this also comes up. Last but not least, the institutional cooperation. The institution is a very difficult thing, a difficult word to say. What do we mean by institution? What cooperation are we seeking? If somebody is, if I am asked this question in a seminar, you are talking about institutional cooperation. What do you mean by institution? What exactly you mean by the institutional cooperation? I will be really at unease, because giving a very pointed answer to it is very difficult because of the nature of this issue, this question of institution which we talk about. So, I mean, these are important issues which I think has to be thrashed out. And given the reality which we have in this region, we have to talk it out, both domestic institutional scenario, institutional cooperation across the countries, linking the others things like economic corridor, easy to say, but then this question of, this has not been touched upon. You have this awful scenario of, tilting unequal distribution. The distribution of income and wealth is getting so much unequal day by day, all this region. So if you have an economic corridor, will it exacerbate the whole thing? Have we thought about it? It's time to think about it. So remember, we didn't talk much about COVID. COVID will give rise to a lot of digital things, as I can understand. That is also has to be talked about in connectivity in greater details. But one thing which we have learned is that all these models which talk are roughly models of something like if certainty prevails, whatever we see now, if it prevails, the income distribution, if it doesn't change, all these things which we are saying is holding certain things as ceteris paribus. This is not. And once this is not, then after all, anything which we talk about must be in terms of welfare raising. So the connectivity issues which we are talking about, all these things we really think very seriously, they are raising welfare of each and every nation which participate in this initiative. What do we mean by welfare? And that's exactly where the income distribution and wealth distribution issue comes in. An economic corridor gives unequal benefits to different levels of skills. Have we talked about it? Have we carefully found it out? If not, connectivity can certainly increase welfare, but asymmetrically. And that's not something which we are talking about. So with this, little observations, maybe very profound, but I did not control myself in flagging these issues which bother me sometimes about this whenever I hear about this cooperation and connectivity issues too. So with this, I hand it over. I thank all the panelists. Probably if we have more time, we could have discussed all these things. If we have flagged these issues at the beginning, you could have answered me, but we will have contacts. We can always exchange views. That's always possible. And I expect to do that in future among all of us. So I thank the panelists, thank all the audience here, and I hand it over to the organizers. And thank you, Salim, for inviting me too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Raichoduri, for an excellent sharing and encouraging our mind, motivating us to work more. And thank you all the speakers. Special remarks by Professor Mustafizur, Dr. Umezaki, Dr. Ruthmanamyong, Dr. Anuswa, Mr. Achut, and Mr. Ravi Shankar Sanju, and all other participants who have watched this brilliant session on the regional connectivity. Thank you all. So we will move into the next sessions after half an hour, and I pass this to the organizer, the SANEM. Of course, there will be a summary, and all the documents will be shared online. So you'll have a chance to get the documents online, and maybe we will have another occasion to have further discussions if any burning issues come. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Probita. I must thank Chair Aditeva Raichaudhuri, Professor Aditeva Raichaudhuri, our Aditeva, and also Professor Mustafizur Rahman and all the distinguished panelists. I wish Professor Raichaudhuri could actually mention this, at the beginning, this kind of the issues which
I didn't want to spoil the show, So I came to
fascinating
the end.
points at the discussion, and also the distinguished panelists, the points they raised. It actually enriched the session so much. Thank you so much to all of you. And I welcome you to the next session, probably a little bit of continuation from this session on where we are actually we'll be discussing on the institutional challenges on the post-COVID recovery. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit Abda.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Salim.
Bye-bye.
No, thank you, sir.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.